Today I'm going to show you one procedure that we use when we cut lumber on the table saw. We're going to use the miter gauge to make a crosscut. This is the miter gauge. The other things you'll need are a speed square, a tape measure, and you'll also need the manual that came with your table saw just to check some of the general safety rules. The first thing we'll do is make sure that our cord is plugged in to an extension so we can make sure that we have enough workspace so that the wood coming off the back of the table saw has somewhere to go and it's not going to get caught up. So now that we've plugged that in, we're going to get started. One thing that you won't need is this rip fence, and so if you come around here you'll see that the way we do, we just move this off. You can take it all the way off depending on how big your wood is, or you can just kind of leave it over to the edge depending on the size of the wood. We're just going to take it off and set it down like so. The next thing we want to be sure of is that you know where your on-off switch is and how to raise and lower the blade. So what we do to raise the blade is turn the crank at the front of the wheel here. One thing we'll do just to double check and make sure we can get a 90-degree cut on the table saw is we raise that blade up as high as it'll go, and what we want to see is in between the teeth, if we put that speed square in there, is it sitting flush with the bottom and the edge of the saw. The next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and grab the piece of lumber that we're going to cut. Don't follow me, Henry. I'll cut this part.
Want me to be?
This is a typical 2x4. So what we want to do is adjust the height of the blade so that the teeth clear the blade. Go ahead and get in there so you can see that, Henry. The teeth clear the blade just barely. So we don't want it up really high, otherwise it's a little more dangerous that way. So we've got the blade set where we want it. And so what we'll do is set up the miter gauge. Again, the miter gauge also has adjustments so you can change the angle of your cut, your cross cut. So we're going to do a 90 today, and but you could move this over by loosening the fastener there. You could move that over to a 45 or a 60 depending on what you needed. We're gonna line that up with 90 degrees, that little pointer, and then tighten that. Get that on there so it's not moving. All right. Okay, and just to double check again, you know, it never hurts to double check to make sure that's really going to hold that piece at a 90 degree. All right. We're going to start with a 5-inch piece. And what we probably want to do is put the shortest side over here. So with the tape measure, I'm just going to go ahead and mark that 5 inches there. I'm going to use my speed square to draw a line all the way to the edge of the piece so that when we just line this up, I'm going to line it up over here. I'm not going to over here. So that when we line this up, it'll be right at 5 inches on the blade. And so we want to make sure that is the blade is lined up. Come over here and get a look at this. The blade is lined up right with that line we drew. So the saw will take that out right there. And that's going to be how you make your cut accurate. So we want to pull this miter gauge back to the edge of the table so that it's still in place, but we've got a firm hold on our piece. We're going to hold the pieces tight against the miter gauge as we push it through. We're going to push it through slow and steady so that it doesn't jar or anything. If you ran into trouble, you'd want to just go ahead and back out. But we shouldn't run into any trouble doing this cut. So I'm going to go ahead, and you saw the on-off switch earlier. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Now you might have noticed that we did a couple things. I made sure that the saw was at its top speed before I started to push the wood through to make the crosscut. So you should always do that. And then you noticed that even after that piece was cut, I went ahead and pushed it all the way back past the saw blade and then turned it off. And we really don't want to be moving around until that saw is completely off. So just leave the pieces where they are. Unless there's a safety issue, and let that blade stop. So let's do that one more time, just so you can see. And again, we're going to turn this on. We're going to let the blade, well, first we're going to position our piece, and I'm not going to measure this one. We're going to position our piece where we want it. I'm going to hold it flush with the miter gauge. I'm going to use my other hand to provide that forward moving force. So we're back to the edge of the blade, we turn it on, we let it go to full speed, and then we push that piece all the way through, so it makes a nice, nice even cut. So here we go. Again, we want to wait until the blade stops to get our final cut piece. All right, and that's all for today. Just remember how to use the miter gauge to raise and lower the blade and to measure your pieces, and follow all the safety rules in your manual. Thank you.